your weekly shot of Gen AI news.
Ever get that feeling?
No.
Like you're just drowning in information. Articles, research papers, you name it. It can get overwhelming.
It really can.
And that's what we're diving into today.
That's right. Some AI tools that might be able to help.
We found something really interesting in the latest AI Espresso newsletter,
Oh, yeah.
NotebookLM.
And that ties in perfectly with our second source today.
It does.
A blog post from Google Keyword about NotebookLM and its newest feature.
It's almost like they knew we were covering this. So this NotebookLM,
Yeah.
it's being described as a kind of personal AI expert to help process complex information.
That is a really good way to put it, because it's not just summarizing. Let's say you upload a bunch of research papers for a project.
Okay.
It's not just giving you bullet points, it's pulling out the quotes, the most relevant quotes, and organizing them for you.
Honestly, that alone would be a game changer.
Hey,
And the blog post even had an example of someone using it to compare different theories from different articles.
yeah.
No more going back and forth. And another thing I thought was really important.
Yeah.
For anyone who's worried about data privacy, the post makes it really clear. What you upload to NotebookLM stays yours.
Right.
It's not being used to train the AI.
Which is huge.
But are you ready for the really cool part? This is what had me geeking out. NotebookLM now has audio overviews.
Okay.
Imagine taking all that complex information and turning it into, well, basically like listening to a podcast, like a podcast episode made from your sources.
That is such a great analogy.
Yeah.
Because it really does get at how our brains work. Think about how differently you engage with a podcast compared to a research paper. It's like that old saying, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember.
Involve me and I learn. I've always loved that quote because it really highlights how powerful conversation can be for learning.
It's true.
And to make this all even more meta, the Google blog post actually embedded an example.
Yeah.
An audio overview of the blog post itself.
Which we will include for you to hear. It's pretty incredible.
It is. But even more than just being cool, the post emphasized that this format, listening to these AI-generated discussions, it can actually make learning easier and aid in memory retention.
Yeah, and this is where the technology and the learning theory, it gets really exciting. By structuring the information as a dialogue, NotebookLM is tapping into these core principles of how we learn best. Our brains are constantly looking for patterns and connections. And when we hear something like in a conversational format, it just hits differently.
Right, yeah.
It really does. And it kind of taps into that ancient part of our brains, you know, that learned through storytelling and shared experiences.
Which reminds me, you mentioned earlier about NotebookLM being built on large language models.
Right.
It sounds like that's a key part of how it can actually create these conversations.
Absolutely. Those large language models, or LLMs, they're trained on massive amounts of data, which allows them to process and generate human-like text. So in the case of NotebookLM, it's taking all of that data, but it's combining it with your specific sources to create this coherent, informative discussion.
So it's not just like throwing sentences together. It's actually understanding the information.
It's understanding the context, the connections.
That's incredible.
It is incredible. And the fact that it's accessible to a wider audience now,
Yeah.
that's a potential game changer too.
Yeah.
AI Espresso newsletter actually touched on that, talking about how it could be really helpful for people who learn best through audio.
Right. And they specifically mentioned how it could break down language barriers.
Yes.
Imagine being able to upload a document in one language and have NotebookLM create an audio overview in another.
Yeah.
It could open up a whole new world.
It really could. Although it is important to note, technology isn't perfect, right?
Right.
Right now, audio overviews are only available in English.
Okay.
And while they're getting better all the time, there's always the chance that the AI could misinterpret something.
Sure.
Or miss a nuance in the source material.
And speaking of limitations,
Yeah.
I do remember the Google blog post mentioned a few.
Yes.
Like, you can't exactly interrupt the AI in the middle of its audio overview to ask a clarifying question.
Right.
Like,
Not yet, at least.
Not yet.
It's not a two-way conversation just yet.
Right.
But it makes you wonder, what will these AI tools look like in 5 years, 10 years?
Right.
What happens when we can have those real-time nuanced conversations with an AI?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if anyone has the answer. But I do think this is really just the beginning for AI and learning.
Yeah.
We're already seeing how technology is changing how we access information.
It's true.
And AI tools like NotebookLM, this is only going to accelerate it.
It's true. And as these tools become even more sophisticated, it raises some interesting questions, like how will this impact education, traditional education?
Right.
Will we still need classrooms? Will we still need teachers in the same way?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not difficult to imagine a future where everyone has personalized AI tutors.
Right.
But at the same time,
Yeah.
there's something to be said for the human element of learning.
Absolutely. And the social aspects, the collaborative aspects.
Yeah.
Those are things that AI can't replicate.
Right.
At least not yet. But maybe these tools can free up educators to focus more on those things.
Okay.
Imagine a classroom where rote learning is handled by AI.
What?
And teachers have more time for mentorship.
Yeah.
More time for fostering creativity.
That is an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Instead of replacing teachers, it empowers them to be more effective.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance, figuring out how to integrate these really powerful tools into what we already have.
And that is definitely something we'll be keeping an eye on.
Yes.
And as always, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
What excites you about the future of AI and learning? What concerns you? Let us know.
Because it's a complex and rapidly evolving landscape, right?
It is.
There are no easy answers.
Nope.
But having these conversations, exploring the potential and the pitfalls, we can help shape a future where technology truly empowers us.
Well said.
Thank you.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of AI that listens and learns right alongside you. Until next time, keep those brains engaged and stay curious.
Espresso. Your weekly shot of Gen AI news.